let me give you a quick introduction on what the redirection service is. This is a free service which allows you to eliminate the step in the provisioning procedure of a smart node when a service provider is deploying a smart node together with his service. We can go through it step by step. It's you see the small diagram that we have here. So in step 1, the smart node which you get from the factory without touching it, with the factory default configuration installed, once it gets installed on the network and boots up, it automatically contacts the pattern redirection service. If it is registered there with its MAC address, as you will see later in the demo, it receives a response from the redirection service, which includes the URL of the provisioning server of the service provider. So now it knows which network, which service provider it belongs to, and where it needs to get its firmware, where it needs to get its individual configuration. And then from then on, step 3, the smart node runs through the provisioning procedure as usual to finally get the complete configuration and be active in the network of the service provider. Good. So what are the benefits of this system? It's all about reducing total cost of ownership. So what we are trying to do is to make it cheaper to own and deploy and use a smart node, so increase the return that you get on the service. How do we do that? We're not reducing the price of the device. No, we are making it possible to not touch the unit. So, unpack it, download the configuration, repack it, and send it to the customer. This step can be eliminated. It also, through automation, can reduce the number of errors which may happen if you do this step manually. And every error which happens in a provisioning process, of course, as a consequence, will have additional manpower, additional time. In the worst case, you need to send somebody on site with a truck roll, etc. So that's all costs which could be associated and which can be eliminated. Also, reducing number of models on stock. If you have a logistics provider, for example, which is serving a number of service providers or serving different services or customers, they would need to keep different units on stock, maybe to be able to ship rapidly. They would keep of the same model, let's say SmartNode 4112, they would keep one which is configured for service provider A, another one which is configured for service provider B, etc. So it means that he would be multiplying the number of models on stock. And this again is a cost which can be eliminated and which can be reduced through this redirection service. Okay, let's go on. So which models are supported? Ultimately, we can provide this service and this feature on every smart node. We will introduce it step by step on the different SKUs that we have. Products shipping today from the factory already are the new models 4660, 70, 4970, 1890. These are the ones which are already shipping today with this service and this factory configuration installed. By the end of August, the 4110 series, 4120 series, and SMDTA models will also be shipped with that feature from the factory. If you have requests, demands for any other models which are currently not listed here, please let us know, and we'll evaluate if we want to schedule them also to be added. We believe that the primary focus will be on the smaller devices, small office, home office devices, so the SMDTA in 4110 series are we expect will have the highest demand for that feature, and that's why they are scheduled first to come. Okay, with that said, we can go forward.
We're going to make Bernard the presenter.
Bernard, maybe you need to unmute.
Yes, hello everybody. Now just three parts I'm giving information to. First a slide on how it works, the process, then a short live demo of adding and provisioning of a system, and then finally how to sign up. How it works, so we have different parts involved. So a distributor normally who gets the who acts like a channel, who gets the reseller, a SmartNode reseller, then a service provider which has different components. So the provisioning server, that's the most important thing. A soft switch then finally to make voice calls, and the operation part of the service provider. And then finally we have the pattern redirection service. The steps, so first a new customer is signed to the service provider, and so does the service provider orders a SmartNode as usual. The distributor, once he knows which SmartNode will be sent to the customer, he can send the MAC address of that specific device to the service provider. Then, as usual and already done right now, the service provider can set up the provisioning server here with the telephone numbers, password, MAC addresses, etc. And then, in addition to the processes in the past, he is able now to add the MAC address of that specific SmartNode and the provisioning server address to the redirection service. That's new. And then finally, either the service provider or the distributor or the channel send the SmartNode to the customer, just as it went out of the factory, without opening the enclosure and configuring it with the default factory config. Then, if the SmartNode is booted, the SmartNode makes a request to the redirection server to check whether there's an entry for its specific MAC address. If there is an entry present on the redirection service, the redirection response will be sent with the address of the provisioning server with that information, and that's now the process as usual with customer specific customized factory configs. The SmartNode sends a provisioning request to that provisioning server, got an answer, usually config and as well firmware if needed, and then registers to the soft switch and does VoIP calls. That's all the steps from ordering a SmartNode to the operation of it. Now we will do a short live demo. I have a SmartNode 4970 and an account on the redirection server. First, what we need to do is we need to go to the redirection server. I'm doing that with my personal account. Here we will need a group, and here I have done a group already just to save time, because it's just group details. The group is basically a company, and all the users are belonging to a company. So a company can have multiple users, and there are just company name and address and everything. And as well, important if the company is a reseller or not. If the company or the group is a reseller, it can create and manage subgroups, which means sub-companies as well, and as well if they are resellers again. So it's really open. So normally a group is a channel, for example, and if the channel has itself a new customer, he can, without having us involved, we can add new customers like service provider he manages to the system without having us involved. Manage they as well. Okay. Next, we need a location, right? And we can create one. A location is basically has a name. We can call it redirect demo or webinar demo. It belongs to this group and it has an URL. That's now important, right? And the URL, for example, that's TFTP server running on my PC, which is this one. This is my IP address, then the $MAC, that's the placeholder for the MAC address of the SmartNode, and .cfg is the extension of the file. Okay, now I can create that location, and now we see that this location is here entered. That's important because normally per customer there will be only one location. If all the SmartNodes of that customer are using the same provisioning server, this location needs to be created only once. And then finally we have devices. Now there needs to be a new device created and important. So I'm just doing that with the web GUI, but there's an XML RPC interface as well, where big customers can implement that in their intranet software and doing that automatically directly out of the customer relations management systems without manually adding it to the web GUI. Okay, now what I need to do, I need to add the MAC address of the device, and this is 00A0BA 0752D7. The comment I can say test SmartNode webinar. So now we do the assignment of a group to it and an assignment of a location. So it takes this location. So if this device is that MAC address is then doing a request on the server, it will use the URL stored in that location here. So we create the device. Now we have created it. Check where it is. Here it is. Okay, now that's all. We are done with the server. What will happen next? We will ship the SmartNode to the customer. The customer will plug it into the network without touching it. Now the device will boot, and just to check if everything is working fine, I will log in and do as well a debug monitor. We have here the TFTP server as well with the log. And now the device is booting. It's getting from DHCP an IP address. So now after booting, the SmartNode waits for a minute and then executes the auto provisioning command. And by the way, it does not just support the redirection server, but also DHCP 66 and 67 options. So if there's no response from the redirection server, it checks different combinations of DHCP 66 and 67 options. So if you are using, so now you are seeing that here the SmartNode executed the provisioning here and contacted the location, the redirection service, got a response, and then finally makes a request to this TFTP provisioning service. Here we see the log that the SmartNode connected to the TFTP server, and there's as well a reboot happening now because the new firmware or the new software, the new configuration was downloaded. We can go and check on the startup config. I have just made a note here, Redirection server demo configuration, so we see that this is the configuration loaded from the TFTP server. Now that's basically all, and as you have seen, we don't need to touch the SmartNode. The only reason why I have connected to it with the console is just to show you what happened. So normally there's no intervention needed by the customer. So customer does only need to unpack the device and plug it in, and that's it. Okay, now to the PowerPoint again. Finally, my last slide. So how can we sign up? It's pretty easy. So as Ramon already mentioned, the service is available to all the customer, and on the web there is a data sheet and the user manual and a service level agreement, and just fill out the service or read through the service level agreement and sign it. And as well, a part of the service level agreement is the fields for entering the user credentials. And once this is filled out and completed and signed, can be sent with email to redirectservice@patent.com, and then you will get an answer back with your user credentials and passwords from us. And once this is received, then you are ready to go. So that's basically all from my side.
Thanks, Bernard. Let me take this screen back real quick. Cool. We're going to jump to a Q&A here in a second, so if you do have questions, please go ahead and submit them. But real quick, we do have a couple new products that we're releasing, or not necessarily products, but just additional SKUs. Our 4670, which is our BRI analog gateway router and IAD, previously just came with G.sh DSL. We have now added an ADSL WAN interface. So the new SKUs that we're adding are 4 BRI analog combinations, or I guess 3, and then 1 just BRI. So there's going to be a 2 BRI, 2 FXS, 2 FXO. We're going to have a 4 BRI option, a 4 BRI with 4 FXS, and then a 4 BRI with FXS and 4 FXO. Then there's going to be 2 analog-only options, one that's just 4 FXS, 4 FXO, and then one that's 8 FXS with this ADSL WAN interface. So those are the 6 new SKUs with our 4670. Also, we're adding, I guess, 8 new SKUs to our 43 and 4400. Our 43 and 4400 are our channel banks. So if you're familiar with our 4900, that's our gateway router. The 4300 is going to be your gateway only. It's going to only have 1 Ethernet port, and it's going to only have gateway functionality. Now the 4400, if you're not familiar with it, that's actually pictured down here. It's the same thing as our 4900 gateway router, but it's just the cost-effective model. So it's got a different enclosure, as you can see here. It's also got 0 to 40 degree Celsius operating temperature and single power supply rather than dual power supply that the 4900 has. So it just gives you another cost-effective model. So the 43 and 4400 before only had FXS, whereas the 4900 had FXS or FXO options. So we've added with the 43 and 4400 FXO options, so anywhere from 12 to 32 ports on each of the models, as you can see here. So 12, 16, 24, and 32. So before we jump to a Q&A, let's run a couple polls. So the first question is,
Yeah.
who's already familiar with this concept? Maybe with IP phones from other vendors.
So again, who already has been using or knows the redirection service from other products? This is not an invention from us. It's something which is quite common on the market. But we'd be interested to hear from you if you've used or heard of it before. Good, I'm interested to see. Okay. So yeah, I think that's good to see and hear. I think it also pretty much matches our expectations and our users profile. I think service providers and distributors are really quite familiar with that. Yeah, thank you. You have another one, Tyler?
Yeah, 1 second here. So the next question is, what is your estimate of cost savings using this type of service? So we'll give everybody a second to respond.
So we said that it's all about reducing total cost of ownership, and we'd like to get an impression from you how much we can reduce this total cost of owning, installing, maintaining, deploying a smart node.
Go ahead and share the results.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot for that as well. As you can see, this can really be quite significant. If you look at the price of a SmartNode 4112 or SNDTA on this kind of product, now this makes up for a significant part of the overall cost. All right, very good. Thanks for these answers and this feedback.
All right, for the Q&A, a couple of questions here. So Ramon, in addition to config, can you also apply firmware?
The answer to that is yes. So in the location and URL that you're providing, and in particular on the provisioning server, you can also set up firmware updates so that you can make sure your entire network is running on the same release, for instance.
Yeah, just another note on that. It's more than a two-step. The configuration is almost the same, but it's then a two-step solution, right? Because the configuration, the factory configuration right now is to prepared to do configuration only. But once the device has reached your provisioning server, then you can normally you have your configurations of your provisioning server contains as well a policy for firmware upgrade, right? Then just after loading your configuration, the factory the software is then downloaded as well separately. I guess that's, from my point of view, that's just a step more then, but within the same, using the same configuration parts, right? Okay.
So the next question would be, will the SmartNode try to pull the config every time it restarts?
It depends. If you leave it with the factory config and do not, or normally a SmartNode as well, if it's not used together with provisioning, so it is unpacked, it is installed, and then it is configured. And normally you add things to the factory config just by editing the the running config and storing it. And once you remove the config part of which contains the auto provisioning and redirections stuff, then it does not do requests to the redirection server anymore. If you leave it, then it does just once at every boot, right? And else it's just only done again after a reboot if you reset the device to the factory settings, right?
Yeah. And I think one important benefit of that is if there is an issue, somehow the configuration got corrupted or anything like that, you can do a factory reset, which is can be done through the reset button, and then coming up with the factory configuration, it will go through the whole process again and go to the redirection service and come back to your provisioning service, and you have it again under control.
Yes, and there are maybe one more comment. So there might be customers who want, for security reasons, still use own special factory config, and this could be done with the firmware download process as well, because there are tools from us available that on a smartware delivery you can modify and update the factory config. And integrate it as well again in the zip file provided from the provisioning service, and then after that step you are really at the same stage as you would be with a customized smartware, right? That's just the most complex but most customized way to do provisioning. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. That looks like that's all the questions for today. Thanks, Bernard, and thanks, Ramon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We'll be following up soon with next month's webinar, which will be on the 10-100. So we appreciate you coming out, and if you do have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll follow up with you soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.